Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 1st of November 2022. Very near my birthday actually, on the 7th, which is a week away. Of course the day after is, I believe, the full or the new moon. I guess it's, well, I don't know actually, because yesterday Halloween it was kind of the neat moon, so it's one way or the other, so I'm not too sure if it's the full or the new, but I'm guessing, I seem to think it's the full moon on the 8th of November. So it's going to be a bit of interesting activity, although it's a lot of very, very confusing data going on at the moment, and probably the best picture I can bring you to start this show on is this shot here. It was posted 4 days ago by Third Phase of the Moon, and if I just zoom in here, you can just see an absolute fleet of ships. Whether they're saucers or some kind of cigar-shaped ships, I'm really not too sure of. But you remember in my last video I'd said I'd met a very interesting chap who communicates with, I guess, non-Earth-based entities, whatever you want to call them, like ascended masters. As I also discussed in my last video, which had really terrible audio because I was walking over the hill and there was a lot of wind, and I'm really sorry about that, and I'm sorry I haven't made a video since then. And this is going to be a big video, and so I'd really advise to watch in sections or get comfortable, watch it one evening when you've got a bit of free time and that sort of stuff, and you've got a bit of time to really think and open your mind to some big ideas. I'm going to be going over, as I do a lot of the stuff that I do normally, trying to bring greater understanding and detail to it, and we're going to be bringing Saturn into this debate as well, because we can understand a lot more about Saturn now. And we think of Saturn about a 28-29 year orbit. Well, if we think of 3 times 28, I say 84. We get this 84 number again, and we're going to explore that in greater detail as well, and see and understand that because of all the other astronomics that we've slowly brought into this massive model that I've been developing, and all of the incredible sightings, many I'm going to show you in this show as well. I'm going to blow you away with many sightings in this show, and but we're gonna open up this debate, and we're going to now start bringing Saturn into my model of what's really been happening with Saturn, and why we've been seeing it in the ways we've been seeing it, and all sorts of other aspects that we're going to hopefully explore. So let's now come to, so we opened on that shot by Third Phase of the Moon, and let's now jump over to this shot here. So this was time-lapse footage over Guatemala caught by Richard Gutierrez, YouTube channel. Blood red colour is from the red iron oxide dust falling from Earth's twin sun, Planet X Nemesis. The fiery red dragon being seen globally. That is by that's Brandon Corinagli posted that. And I was saying, this is what you're going to see at this time. Do you remember in my last videos, just coming up to this, saying, it's a lot of people were focused on what's going to happen in September, and that September was going to be a big time. I remember Dollar Vigilante was going on about September a lot, and you look at the seismology, and there was quite an increased amount of seismology around September. And September, in my opinion, is the kind of like one of the main, if you like, corridors of entrance and exits of big objects coming in and going out of our sun's kind of forward motion. If something is coming in and it's going to go around the front edge of our sun, then it's going to sorry, if it's going to come in and go around the back edge of our sun, so to speak, then you've got kind of like its fundamental entrance and exit corridors are going to be coming in or going out, depending which way it's going around, but most likely, because of the way in which the planets generally move, most likely to come in February, March, and go out in July and August. And if something's not quite coming into our sun, it's being drawn in, but it's just doing a perturbation by something, it's orbiting something ahead of our sun, say, and one of those objects is being drawn in by our sun, but it doesn't actually go right round the back end of our sun. It just does what I call a perturbation, and we'll explore that of its existing orbit. And it gets close to our sun nonetheless, like this object we're seeing right here, and it doesn't go round our sun. And we've got evidence of this now. We've got fantastic evidence. And I often talk about the shot from 1st of September 2019 by Alex Luhan. And he caught this particular object at a great distance when I was saying look out for it as we approached the 1st of September 2019. And then he caught it on webcams to Mexico, and not this shot obviously, but we were much further away from it at that point. And he got the I'll come to that anyway. So, but I was talking about how reminiscent. Well, I was saying that we were going to see something very reminiscent to this shot. That was Calvin looking for Hobbes, who posted it on the 15th of October, 2020, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. And I was saying this is going to be a very similar thing, and it really is. It's what I'm expecting to see. Then we've had this incredible shot coming in from. This is a solar observation camera. I'm not too sure. Does he say which solar observatory this is? I don't think he does, but you can really see it's just like you can just see that these are objects. These are thousands of objects in the tail of this thing that is very close to our sun. You can just see the shield there of the kind of solar observatory. The protective shield that blocks out the direct sunlight, so we can see all the details. Look at that. That is debris in massive volumes. We put these observatories up there for this very purpose, to see what's going on. That's not one or two, that's trillions. And we're seeing all the evidence of it. This shot here that I thought was very interesting, because this was 4 days after Dollar Vigilante's kind of like, it wasn't Dollar Vigilante that was putting out the 24th of September. It was actually one of the European. It was a big meeting or something in the European Union in February 2000 and I think this year, saying everyone will remember where they were around about September the 24th. And so they have this very interesting flyby coming in. We know it's coming in. We've seen so much evidence of it, and it's the exit. And whether we're looking at more than one, because we're going to look at my big model in a shake. But what was very confusing was then this has just been posted by Brandon Corey Nagley as well, and this is, we've just seen the flyby, and now we're seeing this. Now that I have to assume is the moon. That's just rising, and this is just entering into the night sky, which means it's still in the northern hemisphere. it's still in the northern hemisphere. We're seeing aspects of its tail as it's passed. But remember this shot back in, there was multiple shots of this. You know, if you go up and down, you'll see loads of different shots of it. People taking it. You know, you'll just see. He posts quite a few different shots of it from around the world. People seeing this pillar of light, saying, you know, what is it? You know, it's now this was in December 2020. Notice it's very small. Now I'm of a mind that this object is, you know, it's a very confusing thing. You know, let's very quickly go back to my model and just remember the 2017 shot. Well, do you remember the 2018 shot? This one here, the end of 2018, 2019, really. That was by Steve Olsen. It was massive then. So it was getting closer, because if we go 2 years before to 2017, the big prediction I said you're going to see, not that one. That's the one I turned up to America on the 17th of August 2017, and the flyby happened literally as I flew in, and we all knew it was going to happen because it was 200 days after this one. Not that one specifically that Dill Martin posted, his last video, in fact, virtually. But this one. This was the one I said you were going to see come in. And I'm of a mind that last shot was this same thing, just so close to us then. And you know, we saw just epic shots of it, and it's coming, the sun's behind it, it's coming from the sun, the sun's behind it. 2 years later, it's massive. And that was the shot in December 2020. And so it's like this thing is either orbiting faster, considerably faster than I was imagining. We have to remember that. Let's go back now to. Let's go back to. What have we got next? Well, we've got these kind of like these twin suns. This was a shot. Yeah, it was just an incredible shot. I just thought I'd share that with you because we're getting very confused about where the big blue object is at the moment that we've seen so many times. And this was a very interesting shot. I'm not going to play the video, but you can see here, if I go to there, and then he pans off to the left, and you come out and you've got which one's the sun? It's the same thing going on. We're getting all sorts of very confused, and you know, I just thought because I haven't shown any Alex Lupin videos, but then I haven't been making that many videos, but I just thought this was very interesting shot, because you can, now that might just be me over egging it, but I can almost make out the effects of what look like stripes on that object. And so if I go out like that, I can almost see a stripe going right around it. It's a compelling shot. This is what he believes is lens flare, and I'm of mind is right. As this, I suspect, is lens flare, but this is questionable. It's what I'm kind of expecting to see, and I'm struggling a little bit. He also posted this, which I thought was an interesting video. We're not supposed to see stars during the day, and this was some kind of camera attached to a weather balloon that's gone right up, super high, right through what appears to be the atmosphere, way above everything, and then drops all the way back down again. And it is an absolutely incredible piece of footage. Like I say, I'm not going to play it, but that is that's very interesting, you know. And he breaks that down, and he's of mind there's a lot of stuff around it, and this is, like I say, a weather balloon. So I want to just basically say I don't know. You know, I don't know what's going to happen here. I really don't know. You know, I'm very confused as to what I'm expecting is you know, we've seen them coming in. We've got them going past us. We've got all the asteroids. We've got another really fantastic shot, which I've just got to show you, is this shot, which came out. This was I screenshotted it yesterday, so that was 24 hours ago. So that was yesterday, and that was 21 hours ago. It was posted 21 hours before. Oh look, there's the date anyway. So he said the 28th of October, and there we have an asteroid being what looks guided away by spaceships. And you see the footage. This thing's travelling quite fast, and it's got 4 spaceships around it, dragging it off. What I'm expecting to see. Assessing the scale of the crisis. Now, this is quite interesting because suddenly the water is running out of places like Yangtze River. They've had so much unbelievable flooding, and suddenly it's going into drought. Now, do you remember I said that, you know, we've been having these long duration volcanoes, and indeed 2021 we had the longest ever recorded volcano eruption, a kind of pyroclastic flow out of La Palma volcano that lasted from basically late August till, it was like 5 months. It was early December, late November, early December, that sort of time scale. It was like 5 months. It was the longest. It beat what happened in Galileo's time, when the last time it had a long duration eruption. And that means that this object has passed the ecliptic, because that means that this object, as it went round us, it was running parallel with Earth as it went round, and it was constantly there as it went round, which implies that it's travelling, number one, at a very, very similar speed to Earth, which kind of blows out the kind of like, it might move faster, it might not. I mean, this object may be way ahead of us when we get to December, and it could just be the fact that we're close to the tail. You know, this thing is still, as far as I can see, in the northern hemisphere, but that's not conclusive. That's not conclusive. But I looked at those and I just thought, isn't it funny when we see these droughts and we see the kind of like these tree-like effects, how where did I have it? How very similar it is to these kind of lines, these tree-like lines, you know, out of Valles Marianas, this massive 4,000 kilometer long Valles Marianas on Mars. You know, Will Thornhill of the Thunderbolt theory will tell us this is a plasma charge, and yet when we saw the plasma charge coming out of what we could clearly see is Jupiter, massive beyond your wildest dream, plasma charging into what we know is Mars, because it was shot at 10 o'clock at night facing northeast, right from the northern hemisphere, right where Mars was at the time, and bam, we see that shot. And we can't believe the scale or the size of what we are seeing. It is absolutely ludicrously massive what is happening up there. And Wall Thornhill was caught on a webcam. Wall Thornhill can't comment on that because it's just the most incredible shot. You know, and and I find it so interesting now to see that that the Large Hadron Collider has so this was posted on October the 24th, 2022, which is very interesting because it's posted almost, it's like they're firing this thing up almost exactly around Hindi New Year, as in the Festival of Light. You know, it's basically the Hindi New Year is Shiva's. It's all to do with Shiva and Parvati. It's Parvati's birthday. In fact, his main consort divides up into many other goddesses down the way, but the kind of rooting at Parvati really. Well, so I'm kind of loosely understanding, but you know, it's Hinduism. I don't profess to understand it that much, but I am fascinated. And now, obviously, that's not exactly because I don't know. It will be on the new moon, and so depending on what the new moon is around this time. But it is quite interesting that they're firing up the Large Hadron Collider with the max amount of power, with all its latest things, and they're going for it now. And especially when we consider that we were led to believe that, you know, it has its own nuclear power station, plus it takes power from many other sources to do these particle accelerations where they collide these beams of particles travelling 11,000 times around a 27-mile-hour ring at 99.999% of the speed of light, and they're colliding them effectively twice the speed of light, which means that they are forcing these particles to break Einstein's fundamental laws that you can't go beyond the speed of light. They're forcing them, they're creating these collision points where they are putting, if you like, an enormous pressure on the matrix itself. You know, it's disassembling matter, it's smashing it to bits. There's no fusion in this process. This is just smashing the containers of energy, if you like. It's smashing the very fabric of the realm that we live in. Now, we were always told that they fired up the Large Hadron Collider during when power was cheaper. You know, that when people weren't heating their homes, needing power to heat their homes, and here we see completely opposite, where they're just completely going for it. But maybe I misunderstand that, but it's a very interesting time to do their big finale, especially when, you know, the whole purpose for me writing Laughing Gas was it was the guy going on the quest because he'd seen his country fail in its mission to break up the European alliance and feed Europe into a war in exchange for intellectual property. You know, and this massive front was all about entering into a whole new economic system, and it was all behind the woes of war, and that this would fail dramatically for Britain, that if we attempted this, that, you know, the message I was given was, I was shown Britain as the Titanic, and I said, why did I see the Titanic? And the message I got was, Britain comes to a juncture. It stays in Europe and weathers the storm, or it cuts its anchors and heads west. But if it heads west, its fate is sealed. And what made me write Laughing Gas was, it was what I saw myself as a bit of an environmentalist, a bit of a kind of like an activist, a bit of all of this stuff. And I was so full of rubbish. I was so full of just sound bites that just weren't true at all. And the most terrible soundbite that I was utterly believing was that carbon dioxide was somehow bad, and that we wanted to get to carbon zero. And actually, that's a curse for this world. There's no one out there, you know, that is carbon zero. 0.04% carbon dioxide in the air currently that's got everyone so alarmed is even with all these massive volcanoes, and the volcanoes are all going to start getting less and less. Don't get me wrong, you're going to get super massive big volcanoes coming up over the next, running up to kind of December, January. We've got some big stuff going on, but they're going to be much more kind of like Strombolian style, big upward, kind of like we saw on the kind of like on the 26th of February 2010 with the massive Icelandic volcano that went absolutely bang massively, and then of course the day after, on the 27th of February 2010, you had the massive Chile earthquake, the 8.8. So we saw north to south, not this traversing, and there was still very much, this object is now coming in slightly above us, but it's it's orbiting an object that has just passed the ecliptic plane. So it's not coming that much lower, so it's going to basically stay the greater part of this journey whilst it's close to our planet. Most of it is going to be in the northern hemisphere. Only when it starts getting close to our planet is it going to plunge into the southern hemisphere, in my opinion. And when you think about that, that's quite a scary thing, and it depends on how close we are, or how close we are to its tail. And we can see its tail, so we can expect, but we can also see that by the evidence that we could be protected. There are objects up there. There's a sea of spaceships up there that are protecting us. We can see asteroids being towed away. We can, the message in Laughing Gas was to kind of this quest to kind of overcome and to stop my country making this terrible mistake. And I said, is that what was, my message to the gods was, is this it? We just sit back and watch our world being just torn apart and everything, and we can't do anything about it. And the message I was given was, don't worry about your Earth. I've already deployed my best. Unprecedented peace will now be waged upon your Earth. And so I know that even though this kind of massive push towards war and everything else and all these different horrible stories, I heard about what's just happened in Seoul in the nightclub. This massive amount of people that just had kids, that just had apparently, allegedly, a word that Russell Brand uses quite a lot, allegedly died of heart attacks in mass. Just seas of people clearly experiencing, people, giving them I can't remember what you call it now, but where you try and resuscitate them, resuscitation. Loads of them, just horrible sight to see that. And I haven't seen it anywhere other than YouTube. Is it true? Is it just another truth? And for me, there's a whole purpose of my plight in the original format of getting involved on a political front more than anything else was the gatherings at Stonehenge and Glastonbury. These pilgrimages that were to connect to our divine source, and that's what humanity has always tried to do. An aspect of humanity has always tried to connect to its highest aspect. And for me, the traveller contingency, the movement, the people, and the culture have always been of that ilk. They are, we've been swayed by this bullshit climate change science. And I know that there's still enormous amount of truth in so much of what is said, but there's so much lies and deception that it's done so much damage overall that we have to kind of remember what drove us originally into many of these different movements. And for me, it was a pilgrimage. It was a connection to the divine. And it's been somewhat hijacked by bad science and profit-driven climatologists that have just been fed bullshit data to push agendas unwittingly, unknowingly, in most cases. And so here we are at the next stage of this big process. We can see there's another flyby. We can see its tail. We can see its tail is on the ecliptic or close to the ecliptic now because of that shot by Yannis P and all the other shots. We don't really know what to make of much of it. But it's really happening. There's a lot of stuff really happening at the moment. And what would happen if our currencies did collapse? What would happen if they collapsed? This big scary thing that the mechanism that controls us would collapse. How would we survive that? What is real value? What is real value? And apparently the old-fashioned kind of Bitcoin of eons back was sticks, a twig, and you'd split the twig down the middle, and before you'd split the twig down the middle, you'd make your little rings or whatever the rings meant in terms of language to define what the contract was between two or more people, and then you'd split this twig right down the length of it, and each party would keep a side of the twig as their record of the contract. So that became money. That was then a form of money. It was programmable money, as what they're talking about now with this Rishi Sunak, or whatever his name is, this new prime minister, and his whole speciality in digital currencies and everything else like that. He's going to he's introducing that. And if we're going to go from a valueless currency, which is all just driven by the guns, the gun under the tables rather than the gold on the table, if we're going to go back to real value, if we're being forced to go back to real value, and that's what this friend who turned up to me, he said that we're being forced back. There's a higher force that's come down and enforcing certain things that have to happen on Earth now. And I've always believed that these higher forces were going to come, and they were going to come at the right time and help us out when it was needed. And we're all being forced into these new base currencies, a bit like kind of William the Conqueror coming in and having to do a kind of like he wanted to build a currency, but the first thing he could do to define a currency and to understand the value of his currency was kind of do an audit, which was the Doomsday Book, which is where we all get our different names. And you get blacksmith, or it's just Wat Tyler, classic one, Peasants' Revolt, 1381. He was a Tyler, and that's how he was recorded as an asset. And when we think about what an asset is in terms of how we derive a currency, We have to think about our value as an individual and what we can offer as an individual and how we can utilize that within our society. You know, when in India they cancelled all the 50 euro, all the 500 and 1,000 euro notes, and you know, 3% of the money was in the banks, the rest was under people's mattresses, and then they cancelled basically 97% of all the money, and you could only keep what you could prove you'd pay tax on, and so people couldn't prove they paid tax on all this money, so it just was dumped in bin liners everywhere throughout India. Just everywhere. You go around at any back street and there was just bin liners full of what could only have been trillions of rupees. Yeah, trillions of rupees. Just everywhere. You know, and it was illegal to have them because they would prove that you hadn't paid tax. So anyone who's got lots of money hadn't got a taxable. So people just discreetly chuck them away. They had to. Pointless keeping them, worth nothing. They didn't even burn them. Well, probably did, but you know the hilariousness of it, really. But how India just carried on. They just wrote IOUs to each other. And they carried it on like that until the money restarted up and everything recirculated. And how are we going to get through that? How are we going to get through that? You know, at the moment we all have our 4-digit PIN number for our cards, and beep, 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 beep. Everywhere we go, we don't have to intercommunicate because all the contract is done under the value of money. And what happens if that falls apart? And we have to start drawing up contracts between ourselves of our commitment to one another for whatever we're going to do. Is that possible? Of course it's possible. We're talking about real value because we're actually doing something for something and we're working in, and the more complexity we can add into contracts will depend on how we can navigate through this. And governments would be terrified of this because if there's no intercommunication, then all that there can be is famine. If there's nothing, but if people come together at these times and use these opportunities to bolster their communities by bringing their communities together through this, you know, there's big things that are going to happen here. These are very, very big planetary stuff that's going on. You know, I've shown you thousands and thousands and thousands of epic flybys. You know, we've charted it for so long, getting such a big understanding. So I just want to now do a bit of an overview then. I'm going to close on this. I'm not going to do it too long. We're just going to do a bit of an overview. And we're now going to come to going back to, you know, we've over the years, I was going to show you that Alex Luhan shot, wasn't I then? If I can find it very loosely. The one I always show on the videos, just to kind of like, we will come past it at some point. But I thought I'd come just to the raw model. No, sweetheart, come on down. Lie down. We just come to the raw model. Little Shanti come to say hello. And we're just going to take a little bit of a view back. We're going to go back to 262. Lie down, sweetheart. Lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Come on. Lie down, sweetheart. Good girl. We're just going to come to 262. Remember our 3 days of darkness, earthquakes all across Asia, all across Europe, all across Africa, and then what's going to happen is, go on then, sweetheart. Go and lie down. Go and lie down. Go and lie down. Lie down. What's going to happen is our sun is going to go round planet X. Our sun is going to go round planet X 6 times in 1800 years, and Pluto, or whether you want to call it Uranus, or whether you want to call it Neptune, or whether you want to call it Aries, is going to go round 5 times around this object. And in in the first 900 years, they're going to become in opposition to each other, and then after 1800 years, they're going to be coming much closer to each other, and that's Galileo's time. And he was, he discovered first of all the moons of Saturn and then the moons of Jupiter. And then we come to it was about 1782, wasn't it? The discovery of Uranus. Remember, Uranus has got an 84-year orbit. So let's think about that, because then we come to 1846, the discovery of Neptune. But 1859, we have the Carrington event, where a massive electromagnetic... I'm just going to put the doggy outside, because she's getting a bit excited. Come on, Shanti, come here. Come here. Water. So 1846, we've got the discovery of Neptune, but we've also got massive sightings of the moons of Saturn. So isn't it interesting that, both in kind of Galileo's time and in, which would have been at this kind of point here, and then leading up to that, and another cycle of in the next cycle of our sun, and indeed Pluto, whatever you want to call, going around planet X, we get sightings of Saturn again. And then we go back to 1596, I think, or 1597, but I think it was 1596, Ceti B Mirror, first dwarf planet ever discovered. And then we're getting all the crazy sightings. Everything's just getting bigger and bigger. And suddenly we're kind of seeing this massive blue thing, which is the furthest, which is one of the big objects that orbits round this Pluto, whatever you want to call it. It literally has this Jupiter-esque planet orbiting around it, of what I showed you, plasma charging into Mars on the 14th of October, 2014, caught by Jeff P. That massive kind of like incredible shot. So we go 84 years after 1596, and we come to when Isaac Newton is 1681, where he sees the moons, or whatever he's calling these, Halley's Comet, and then another one flies by. So we know there were at least two, even though we only credit one in the official story. Now, it's not exactly 84 years after Isaac Newton's discovery that we see Uranus with its 84-year period orbit. But we notice that it is an 84-year orbit, so they're seeing it early. They're seeing it before its time, but we're saying that's an 84-year orbit. And then we come round to, like I say, Neptune, 1846, and we're saying its orbit is basically 2 times 84. Once 8 to it's 16, 168. It's 100. It's officially said 165, but basically it's 2 times 84. And then we come to 1930 and the discovery of Pluto, exactly 84 years after Neptune. And it's got an orbital period of, guess what? 3 times 84. Now, I know we explore this a lot, but what I find so interesting is at this point here, we get incredible sightings of Saturn and Uranus. Oh, sorry, it's incredible sightings, yeah. We discover, Neptune, we're calling it a big blue planet. It looks a little bit like Uranus. Uranus, big blue planet, looks a little bit like Jupiter. Although Galileo said he'd seen it big and blue and all these planets, but he was obviously put under house arrest, and we said Galileo was right, Copernicus was right. It was just like, well, maybe Galileo was right. Galileo was right. Not Copernicus was right. Maybe Copernicus was wrong. And so when we keep seeing, because we've just had this kind of massive, we're all seeing Jupiter, absolutely massive, saying it's going to be the closest it's been to Earth for many years. And what do we see it with? We see it, ironically, with these massively close shots of Saturn, and you can see Saturn's rings, and it's just like, what the hell is going on? That's supposed to be so unbelievably far from us, and yet we can see it, planet and its rings, with very weak telescopes and together. And so when we realise that this is our sun going, it's not, I meant it to appear to be going above the ecliptic plane, but what's actually happened is our sun dropped below the ecliptic plane as it's come round here. It's if I just come back a little bit, it's come round here, and at this point, here, our sun is above the ecliptic plane of the whole system, the whole Planet X system. As it comes around here, it's going to cross, and then it goes into the lower aspect, and all those objects orbiting around Pluto are dropping down. And I thought they were orbiting Pluto. I thought this would have been Jupiter-like planet, the big blue planet, and all the objects. And that's why I did it like this, but it's not like that. All of these objects, all these twin-tail objects are all coming in around this one object, including the big blue Jupiter-like planet that we're seeing. So we can simply understand that when we think of 3 times, what we understand is that Jupiter is the move is 3 times 28 is 84. I say 2, 16, 24. Yeah, 84. We can understand that there is an object that we call Saturn that has basically arrived in the 1600s with Jupiter, that both orbit this object along with these other twin-tail objects, and that many of these objects are covered with this red dust. Now we see photons, we call our sun, when something's close to our sun, the perihelion, and when it's furthest from our sun, it's aperihelion. So what would we call objects close to an object that is not hydrogen going into helium, but it's spewing out iron? And so I just thought, well, if Fe is the symbol for iron, and this thing doesn't spew out helium, it spews out iron, then we could say that the front edge of these objects going around this would be going round the well, instead of, it would be the perihelium. Would that be kind of astronomically and chemically sound analogy of the word? Fe, perihelium and aperihelium? I don't know, but we have an object that is very, very much denser than our sun, and it no longer spews hydrogen and helium. It doesn't fuse to hydrogen into helium. It's spewing whatever's below iron into iron at its core, and it spews out iron, dust, and these objects that orbit it attract it. And so it means that this, all our objects are all orbiting this, whether you want to call it this Pluto, whatever you want to call it, really. This is not the big blue Kachina. This is a red dwarf planet. And the blue one that comes round, just comes round and actually comes round our sun, as does Saturn. It gets so close, and it also comes right round our sun when it loops forward, even though they're all going in this direction. This is going in this, planet X is moving in this direction, our sun is moving in this direction, this is moving in this direction. They are in an orbital relationship, but they're actually orbiting the Milky Way. They're orbiting at the same galactic center. That they're all orbiting the same galactic central point, which is our Milky Way, apparently, seemingly. And they also must be orbiting around our Milky Way by logic in the same, realistically, our Milky Way just exploded out. It was a central object. It was most likely two neutron stars that came together, merged together, and brought so much mass together that critical mass occurred and an explosion occurred. Blew all that matter out, and that matter is now orbiting that black hole, or they have a kind of combined mass somehow, and that we're all attracted to the overall mass of all of that matter in that relationship. And it's not really a kind of a central orbital mass, and more kind of a energy coalescing. These things all drawing together slowly but surely into, it's like two wings of matter spewing out, and they have individual mass in between these two wings of matter as it's spewed out in this massive polar explosion that we are a tiny part of. And that will eventually all come back together, I'm assuming, potentially into two spheres that orbit each other. Potentially not, maybe they'll just stay forever like that, but I imagine that they're going to progress into some form or another as time continues. And maybe it's around a black hole they really all just orbit at the center of this. But all these objects seem to be our sun, Pluto, whatever you want to call it, planet X. They're all in an orbital relationship, but they're all going forwards. And because you can understand forwards for us is December the 21st. That is the front edge. When we're going around the sun, if we would be there going around, this is Earth by the looks of it. When we would be at this point here, when Earth reaches this point here, then that would be what I'm now understanding would be the 21st of December. That's the frontal edge. That's where our sun is heading. That's the direction, if you were to give it a bearing point, rather than a kind of like a conventional bearing point, a date bearing point. And we're right next to this object. We're closest we've ever been, except that we right now are we're right over here, and our sun has now come up through the ecliptic plane of the planet X system, and all of these objects, including Jupiter, are now about to coming in and going. Jupiter's coming in, going right round our sun, as in so many of the other objects, apart from a few that don't come quite in, and they just do this, if you like, a perturbation of their existing orbit, get drawn into our sun, but don't go right round. But it would seem that our Carrington event would have been much more likely caused by Saturn, and our Uranus event is also much more likely Saturn. And the inner one, Galileo's time and Isaac Newton's time, was all being about close to Jupiter. And so this time is all about Jupiter, really. This is your big astronomical influencer in your lives at this time and for your family's lines. You know, my parents were all born in the kind of 40s. And, well, I think my dad was born in 38, just before the World War started. And my mum was born in 44, during the World War, you know, when we were right next to it. Remember Carlos Ferrada's big prediction of the earthquake that would occur on the 20th of January, 1939. And what he said on the 24th, and it occurred on the 20th, on the full moon. And of course, these are the big flybys that we could be expecting coming up next. You know, this is the sort of date that these things are going to occur. And so we just got it all going on at the moment. We can finally bring all of this together now. I can, you know, I'm still kind of convinced that there's more twin tails. I've got 4 twin tail objects in my model, and I could bring that up to 5 or 6. And we've just found out that a asteroid hit Mars in May. I think it was around about May, June, April, May. I think it was this year. Could have been last year. But just for having a twin tail object that's out that far as well, it would be another object or to the ones that we've currently charted. So what if we could say that potentially that the one we're seeing right now, the one that the Brandon Corey Nagley's just caught and that sort of stuff, is one that's potentially even closer to the kind of like the Pluto, whatever you want to call it, that there's an even closer one. And then there's another one that we're seeing that's coming in September and going out in January. And then we've got the pair. And then we've got another one. And potentially, who knows, there could be more. You know, I'm just wondering what, you know, those kind of, when we see kind of, when we see that kind of where is it, that this type of shot, and that type of shot, you know, wouldn't that look like some kind of lampstand or something like that? Wouldn't that be a kind of biblical vision of seeing some kind of pillar of light, some kind of lampstand? If you saw that, is that a lampstand? Is that what is that? Well, you can see what it is. It's the whole tail of it being illuminated by the sun. You know, and it's just and corroborating shots of it or corroborating shots of it around the planet. And it's and like I say, this was 2020, but you know, it's pretty overwhelming stuff that's going on, guys. And it looks like I say, we are being given some assistance, and now we can get a much bigger understanding. I'm not trying to tell you that my model is correct, but this is the time that I would imagine that they would desperately try and get World War III off the ground. And remember, what the World War III is all about. For me, World War III is all about this: firing up the Large Hadron Collider at the point when you drive the vibration of Earth to its very lowest point, to basically escape this planet and go somewhere else, to open up, because there's just everywhere is just too far away. And then you've got this dimensional link to, because if everything is here and now on a source level, I'm not talking about on a time and a space level, I'm talking about on a source level. in terms of the absolute fundamental creation, not something that calls itself God, but the source of all things, in terms of the fundamental creation of all things, must come from one place. You know, we saw that with the kind of like the ideas of kind of like of quantum entanglement, where they kind of separated two of the same particles, and whatever they did to one, the same thing happened to the other, implying that even though there was a distance between these two when they separated them, whatever they did to one, they were connected to a single source. And we found that primary connection. So you can imagine, if you make a hole at any point, you come to a single source, you're going to find where everything else is. And if you knew where there was a whole massive hub of other planets all waiting to be, that everything was here and now. Everything was here and now. And that you could just blow a hole to the next one down, and the next one down, and the next one down. And that was how they really transported their water from Mars to Earth, through a Large Hadron Collider. This was a dimensional tear, because even though you might come to Earth might not have been at its point of development ready for what would have then been a Martian invasion of our Earth, when some water-based world migrated to our planet and brought its oceans with it via a massive dimensional tear. And it seems that this is all a massive orchestration to drive and lower the vibration to produce this effect that I'm guaranteed that unprecedented peace will now be waged on my planet, that this agenda will not be allowed to go forward. Yeah, all of the different bodies are going to have their different stories in this, as they do. Many come to this with locked into stories of belief, and I can't change virtually one of the people that were carbon zero advocates in my life. They are sworn to that. Most of them are sworn to that. And it's such a vibrational thing to attach to something which is just there to serve the nuclear industry and give us a means to gather depleted uranium to use in weapons, which is what the CO2 story does primarily. It guarantees nuclear energy, and nuclear energy guarantees plutonium enrichment ultimately, because you're well, not necessarily, but there is, you know, I mean, I guess, you know, they have to put kind of uranium into centrifuges and kind of create massive compression using centrifuges that spin at incredibly high speeds to create the pressure, like in the center of the sun, to kind of fuse what is all effectively lead being forced into the next level of matter, but not quite getting to the next level of matter, and thus being nearly at whatever would be beyond, like hydrogen going into helium. Imagine, I guess, a version of hydrogen going into helium, but not actually becoming helium, would be a kind of heavy water, what we would consider to be a heavy water with extra protons and neutrons within it, and weighted with extra electrons. Truly, you know, it's and this is how we're kind of defining what plutonium is. It's just really, really intensely loaded with protons and neutrons, or its mass is absolutely becomes even more dense than what it was originally. And so there's a reason why they need the Large Hadron Collider fired right now, when they're going to try and make their war happen. And this is a big part of their story. And their story is what keeps them happy to believe that they are going in the direction they need to do. They are serving their gods. And ultimately, we're all serving our different gods here. But ultimately, humanity is just a conduit. Humanity is not considered the blame for this. It is the conduit for this, and the stories that are fed into us, and the control mechanisms that control us to make us go along with these stories and attach us to some of the most heaviest things that we can become, these nuclear bomb, nuclear obsession loving beings that came into this with such green ideals and we were compromised. We were used for agendas. I was used to push an agenda which is not true. You know, I discovered the wonders of carbon dioxide much more because of elephant Lorraine, elephant Lorraine, I think it's called. It was the biggest. I don't know if it was the first. It was the biggest Martian meteorite discovered in Antarctica, and you know, it's obviously not carbon dating because it's way older than carbon. It's zircon dating, which is the oldest kind of mineral known to man, potentially, and it was 4.8 billion years of age, and it was only later, after Mariner 9 Mars kind of discovered the evidence of zircon on Mars with thermal imaging cameras that picked up the kind of radioactive discharge from these areas over on the Mars surface, and managed to date that because of readings of our own planet to about 4.8 billion years. And it was only in latter years that people, this woman, I can't remember her name now, but there's a scientist, I discovered it years ago, but a scientist just joined the dots and realized, oh my God, this Martian meteorite, actually looks like it actually came from Mars, from an asteroid impact, and kicked up asteroids off the surface, which came to Earth, because we were being at some point close to that debris as we come round. So we've got all these different stories. Of course, I'm of a mind it was an interdimensional tear between Mars and Earth, which brought all this material. But nonetheless, the whole kind of revealing of the kind of like the story of Elephant Lorraine and what happened with Mariner 9 Mars, and the kind of dating of the zircon, and how the zircon was formed by it could be only formed under a very deep ocean, and a massive ongoing carbon dioxide process that enabled the breaking down of the rocks, and this whole massive story that we now see. And everything is kind of all in its place now. Everything I said in my book would happen has happened now. And we're all coming to the same place of, what are we going to do about it? You know, for me, in my understanding, most of those ships are there to transport the souls that are ready to move on to the next level of their evolution, to a fifth dimensional realm, which is all the best you've created here, merged together in a single realm. And you cohabitate that realm. It's all of them living together, as the Earth astral realms are your own private realms. So it's a very different realm, and to get in there, there's a contractual agreement, which is what Laughing Gas is all about. Laughing Gas is me migrating my soul from the fourth dimension into the fifth, and making my peaceful intentions and declaring my peaceful intention to access that realm and to go on that journey, and to take those with me on that journey, and to charter it. And many of you aren't going to be able to do that in a living life. Many of you are going to do that at the end of your lives. You know, you have work here to do, and some of you are going to do it as well. Most of you, it's just beyond belief. And I promise you, the believers will be leaving. That's what it's all about, really. And these stories of belief are to draw you into massive karmic contracts that your soul no longer wishes to access, because you will not be allowed to pollute the next age with your karma. And that's the big problem that's happening here right now, is there's not going to be the transference of karma to the new age. It's all going to come back in our faces now. Every last bit of it, everything we throw out comes back at us before this age concludes. And this age will conclude with a thunderbolt, as Will Thornhill calls it, a very close flyby that is the transference of our astral realms. And a big part of what this planet is, but the transference is actually happening, really. It's the transference is the thunderbolt, is the destruction of the fourth dimension, as in the data will be deleted by that. And that's the process that's happening here in the biggest flyby that we don't know when it will be. Maybe it will be the Saturn one, maybe it will be the Jupiter one, maybe it will be one of the twin tails. We still just truly don't know. But whatever it's going to be a big one when that happens. And that will delete the fourth dimension. So it will be the end of a world. It will be the end of the fourth dimensional world, the astral realms. And by the time that has happened, the occupants of this realm will have mostly migrated to the fifth. They would have taken all their best and transferred it to the fifth. That is part of the evolutionary story of the souls that have been living on here for this cycle, is to now move and let a new band of souls come in and go through their evolutionary process on Earth. And this story will repeat itself. And a whole new story, well, not this story specifically, but a whole new age will repeat itself. And we've just got to try and not let the story, I know what this is, it's a massive story thrown over the top of the orbital mechanics that's really going on, and the story that we're really in. We throw this story at it for the control of humanity and the agendas that are being unfolded, or at least attempted to be unfolded now. And they need to believe their agendas are going to work. You know, they're being, most of these agendas, they've been double-crossed and they don't know it. They've been deceived. And so the assistance that's coming in now is to help with that grand deception. And that grand deception is just in so many places now. You know, you've just seen Jupiter and Saturn so close to each other and so massive. You know, it's a bigger story. It's a much, much bigger story than we've been told. So that's me. So exhausting making these and touching these subjects. It just wipes me out. Anyway, another long video. Onwards and upwards. We don't know when the next one's going to be. We don't know what's coming in. We can just imagine that that December, January is going to be the next biggest. Remember what I was told when I first seen this Planet X, and I came out and I was shown it, and I was chased out in the dream. I was being chased by the army, and then a friend jumped out and gave me an apron, which I thought was very weird because it's kind of a very Masonic kind of symbol, isn't it? Really, aprons and what have you. So I don't know what the apron means in a dream, but apparently it means something in dreams, whether it's protection or whatever it is. But it seemed to give me protection when he gave me this apron. I mean, he does make pizzas. And I often wear one of his aprons. If I'm helping him make a pizza, I wear one of his aprons. So it's quite fitting that he gave me an apron, and maybe it was that, but I've got a funny feeling it was very symbolic. But I put this apron on, and I suddenly felt much better, and I didn't say, why are those crazed soldiers chasing me? I said, where's the sun gone? Where's the sun gone? The sun had gone inside of me, and he said, because of that, and pointed up, and I was shot out of my body, and I could see the earth all in darkness. There was no light coming to it, and I turned round. I was just a point of consciousness. I turned round, and I saw this massive planet with this tail, and it came past me, and as it came past me, heading straight towards the earth, blocking all the sun that was directly behind it, from the earth, I heard the words, "This is what the fuss is all about." And this is what the fuss is all about. This is what the fuss is all about. So there you go, folks. Yeah, when I came out of it, by the way, when I came out of that and I went down and I sat down and I said, why did I have to see that? I said, no, I said, tell me that misses. I opened my computer and I went straight to my Obbits folder and I said, why does that tell me that misses? And the answer I got straight away was, yes, it misses. It is not human karma. It is deemed you are not a race of war, but you are a race subverted with war. And that will now change. So don't worry about this World War III, everything they're doing, just do everything you can within yourself to say, I don't want to go to war. I don't want to be part of this war. I'm not in this energy crisis deception. I know that there is abundant clean energy out there. It's funny, when I looked at the word helium, perihelion, I always get confused between the two. And there's so many words like that I get so absolutely confused between the two, and no matter how much research, it just gets worse and worse and worse. But I looked at helium. Actually, I've got it down. Look, I'll show you, because I just thought it was quite funny when I looked at it, and then I saw this. I looked for. Maybe it's more here. No. Maybe it's here. Helium, first to fusion. Helium is building the world's first fusion generators, enabling a future with unlimited clean energy. Fusion energy. You ever heard of them before? It's new to me. It really is. And so that was a very, very exciting little thing to see, because Helium Energy Incorporated is an American fusion research company located in Everett, Washington. The company focuses primarily on the production of low-cost, clean electric energy, and we are working towards being the first commercial power plant that is derived exclusively from water. Look at that. That's very exciting, isn't it? So look, I thought I'd leave it there, because I often wonder where it's going to go. You know, I told you about the brilliant light power that brilliant light power. Oh, look, brilliant light power. See, people saying it's a hoax. It's so not a hoax. I don't believe it is a hoax at all. But obviously, there is always going to be you know, they do this. They do this incredible process where in this they're using what do you call it? He's using silver to create the electrode. Because silver, though it melts at a very low temperature, it boils at one of the highest temperatures of metal. It boils at a higher temperature than tungsten, and so it makes a great kind of fluid electrode that that doesn't boil. And so they've managed to keep a fusion process going apparently longer than most others. Obviously, there's always going to be people tell you it's bullshit, but who knows? So I think I'm going to leave it there. You know, we've seen some of the latest flybys and sightings. We are a little bit confused about what's happening next because we don't know, but we know that because of 2021 and the duration of the La Palma volcano, that we have seen these objects on the same ecliptic plane. We have all the crazy sightings coming in, that we're getting more objects coming through. We have we've got all the data we could ever want, really, haven't we, of something massive up there, even though we're in a terrifying story that everything is falling apart. What's happening on this planet astronomically is a very normal, even though it's big distances apart. It doesn't always happen. This is a normal process for our solar system to go through this periodically, and that we need to be the best humans that we can be through this process. Trust in this grand process. There's no one who gets out alive either way, and work with it. Be peaceful. Keep bringing in the light. Keep praying. Keep connecting to the divine, to the source, in any which way you can, and keep on doing what you've got to do. And yeah, honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous, and big golden rings of light around you. Invite the protection in. Remember what happened to those kids in Seoul, if that really happened, which is looking like it did. It was panic. Panic that seemed to be the trigger more than anything else. Panic. And so don't lose your head in panic. Regardless or not, whether you've been, just don't lose your head in panic, regardless. Stay out of fear. The world might go crazy. Just navigate through it, moment by moment. Breath is the biggest acid buffer system in the body. That's how your body dumps more acid in the breath out of using carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is still electrons, protons and neutrons. These are kind of like, it's still the electron transfer that I talked about in the last video, about what real intracellular respiration is all about. Ultimately, is moving electrons. That's all kind of in the whole process of what we call respiration, and the finalizing of us moving electrons, as in the acidity, because acidity is relative to the amount of electrons orbiting protons and neutrons and excess electrons, making an element, an ionic, an ion, is what makes it acidic, which is what makes it electric, electrons. And when we breathe out carbon dioxide, we are moving electrons out through our breath. If you're getting acid reflux, getting a big build-up of electrons, big acidity, dump them in the breath. Just keep moving them out of your body. Might be a good practice as we get closer and closer to the high stress, because this is all about taking us into fear and lowering our vibrations through these different tactics, and we can navigate a lot of that with the breath alone. Keep moving that energy out of your body. Keep transferring it if you've got anxiety and fears. Acid buffer systems. Consciously do it with your mind. So much love. So much protection. So much divine guidance. Take care. Ciao.